Hello and welcome back to Headstrong. You're listening with me, Louis Strong, the host of this podcast. Headstrong is a podcast where I sit down with a variety of individuals in the public eye to talk to them about their lives and their careers, but notably their vulnerabilities, to understand what the word headstrong means to them. This series is entirely devoted to the sport of cricket. And to date, I have had many cricketers on already, including Jason Holder, Jos Buttler, Sam Curran, and many more. And all of them are available to catch up right now if you just go to your usual podcast streaming service and search Headstrong. This series, we are supporting the wonderful Ruth Strauss Foundation, which has many wonderful ties to cricket, thanks to Sir Andrew Strauss. And I hope that we can continue to support the amazing work that charity is doing. This series is also sponsored by Ascot Group and McGill and Partners, and more information on these wonderful sponsors later on in the podcast. On this episode of Headstrong, I am joined by South African legend Morne Morkel. Morne now lives in Australia and indeed plays as a local in such things as the Big Bash. However, we had a chat about his move from South Africa and indeed his touring life to Australia and how life has changed dramatically for him. We also had a chat about how sport unites South Africa, as well as how Morne tackles injuries. I really hope you enjoy this episode of Headstrong. Morne, thank you very much for joining me on Headstrong. I hugely appreciate it. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going great, thank you. I had 6 weeks away sort of from home. I just finished the Big Bash, so it's nice to finally be home and just have some quality family time. You know, I've had quite a tricky year. It started 2020 and then leading into 2021, where I was over in the UK. I stepped on the ball, went over my ankle, and I got this ankle surgery done in the UK. Stuck in quarantine here, and then played the Big Bash. So spent a lot of time away from home with a lot of obstacles, but it's good to finally be here and just to be sort of a dad.
Absolutely. Well, you're in your new home. I mean, I call it new, probably new in the big picture, I suppose, in the sense that you are very much halfway across the world from where I am at the moment, in Sydney, residing in Sydney.
Yeah.
So how have you adapted to Australian culture and Australian life then?
I don't think I'll ever adapt. The Australian way is very different. But I moved here about 2 years ago. I sort of backed up in South Africa. My wife's Australian. And once I retired from international cricket and was chasing the sort of relaxed, easier lifestyle with playing just the T20 cricket and a bit of cricket in the UK. We decided to move here to Australia. But so I haven't spent a lot of time here since the move. But the Australians are very different. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's a fantastic sort of family lifestyle we're living here at the moment. So far, so far so good.
I mean, you are now officially an Australian citizen.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting for me to be talking to you in that sense. How does that feel to you? And when someone poses the loyalty question, I mean, is it now just not even worth questioning?
So I've got my residency, so I haven't got like my passport, my Aussie passport yet. But yeah, it does feel very, very weird. I mean, I played in the local Big Bash. I played as a local. It's a strange sort of tune to it. But, for me, I always tell the people that I never left South Africa with any bad blood. I'm still very passionate about South Africa. I still, all my family is still there. So, I miss South Africa every day. But for me now, life is here and, it's a nice sort of journey. We started here now sort of 2 years ago. And then, we'll see how it goes.
What is it that you like about the kind of living in Australia then? Because as you say, it is your wife's home country. Your kids are now growing up there, and I imagine that the culture in terms of growing up for your kids is starkly different to what you experienced probably in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially here in Sydney, there's not a lot of space. I grew up in South Africa. We always had big yards. We had good space. We had that sort of Um, it's we have that sort of freedom to go and roam. Well, yeah, in Sydney, yes, you do have that, but it's sort of, on top of each other slightly a little bit. But yeah, like, for me, coming back to your question, it was just for me, this something a box I needed to come and tick. I was when I retired, like I said, I still spend a lot of time outside South Africa, and safety for me was, at that time, it was a bit of a concern in South Africa, and with my family sort of spending a lot of time by themselves. So, for me, it was a no-brainer to come to Australia. And they've got beautiful beaches here. We stone throw away from one of the beaches here. So just for me, in the afternoon, to take the kids down and just unwind and get away from everything, it's magical.
Was there any anxiety or anything? I mean, of course, you've travelled the world
Yeah.
as a cricketer, but moving countries entirely to live somewhere else, I would imagine is quite a daunting process. Because I remember when I went to Sydney for about 3 months, and I thought that was quite a big deal. But moving there indefinitely is, quite a challenge for you, I imagine.
It's bloody scary. I'm not going to lie. My entire life is still in storage there in Cape Town, in South Africa. But I think the most important thing for me is to, for me, it's just to stay in the moment. I don't look too far ahead. Yes, it's important to sort of, for the kids' sake, map out sort of goals and life plans and life dreams and all sort of things. But I think for me, because I'm still fairly fresh here in a new environment, it's just to sort of take it day by day. But also, South Africans are everywhere. So I've met some fantastic people here that is sort of making life a little bit easier. But it's definitely a scary and daunting sort of move, backing up, coming into the unknown where, to be honest, I don't really have a big network. All my network, I live my life in South Africa, is back home. And to now find a new physio, to find a new dentist, to, just go and day-to-day sort of things. It's frustrating, but, sort of things, I'm growing every day, I'm growing every month, and it's a nice sort of life experience.
So what's been that biggest lesson then so far, apart from finding out where the nearest shop is?
No, I think the biggest lesson for me so far, like I said to you, is just to stay in the moment. Yeah, and one of the things I really struggled while I was playing and I was away on tour is when I was home to really be present. And I'm working on that sort of daily, is to be with the kids. And if we go down to the beach or we play here now, is to really work hard to shut down my mind and really be focused and enjoying each sort of moment, or having a glass of wine at night, just to really savor that moment. And I think with a slower sort of lifestyle we live here in Australia, that helps me quite a lot.
Are you still are you picking those Australian wines then, or are you going back to your roots?
Luckily, there's a South African store just around the corner here, so I'm getting my wine supply from him. But also, I'm trying a couple of good Aussie wines. Like I said, I'm finding my feet.
Yeah, one thing I do have to ask is what my biggest fear, obviously coming from the UK, is the biggest creepy crawly or bugs here are just like non-existent almost.
Yeah.
In South Africa to Australia, it's not that starkly different. I mean, are you all right with that kind of stuff?
No, I'm used to all the creepy crawlies.
Yeah.
We've got a place in Kruger National Park, wildlife and snakes and spiders and scorpions and all those sort of things. So I mean, there's a lot of similarities between Australia and South Africa, which is pretty cool. But in terms of all they've got you, I mean, I think South Africa is far worse. We've got lions, leopards. They've got a dingo, and if you're unlucky, a kangaroo might kick you off your bicycle. So there's you can't really compare it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, you briefly touched on it there. Then the Big Bash as a local player. Now, what was that experience like? And were you kind of, there were crowds actually for some of the games, which is pleasing now considering the circumstances. What was that like? Did you feel welcomed in by the nation, I suppose, or was it kind of a bit of a different experience?
That was a great experience. Like I said, I was very nervous going in, playing as a local. I was sort of, as a 36-year-old, coming into the environment, taking a spot of a younger guy, because at the Heat where I played, the Brisbane Heat, there's a lot of up and coming, quality fast bowlers. And I think for me that was sort of the thing, coming in and playing and stepping in toes. But for me it was important just to pass on experience. Help as much as I could. On the field, off the field. But my journey of my time was quite frustrating. Like I mentioned, I had ankle surgery. I spent a lot of time in quarantine. I did about 6 weeks of quarantine, where before I went up to Queensland, I had to do another 2 weeks. I came back to visit a family. There was a little outbreak here on the northern beaches. Then I had to quarantine another 2 weeks. So for me, my tournament's very stop-started. And in that time, I was, trying my best to get fit. I mean, I didn't even bowl the ball for 3-4 months. So I had 2 net sessions straight into a game. And then, you're playing for a massive club. You want to do well. You want to, sort of put your peg or your marker in the ground and help the team sort of perform well. So there was a lot of things, a lot of demons I had to overcome and block out and when I stepped on the field. But luckily, everything went well. And unfortunately, we lost out in the semi-final. But for the team where they ended up last year and the amount of growth they had this season, that was great to see.
Absolutely. I mean, as you said there, you have experienced isolation in probably its most fullest and grueling capacity.
Listen, I can tell you anything and everything about quarantine, isolation, and all the tips and tricks and everything.
Well, here we go then. Yeah, I mean, because of course we can talk about the physical isolation, but I want to explore with you how it affected you mentally, because it's a lot of time to spend, literally locked up and being unable to do anything about it. So, what was your strategy?
I mean, for me, the hardest part is the one stint I did. I had a very sort of standard hotel room. My windows couldn't open. So in the morning, I'll make myself a cup of tea. I was still sort of on UK time. I had jet lag, so I'll wake up at 3 a.m. I'll make myself a cup of tea. And then I'll sit in the window, and then you can see sort of all the people that travel that came with, from overseas. They'll sit in their balconies or they had windows, and I had no window. So that for me was the hardest part, to see people sort of actually sitting outside in the windows in the morning and enjoying a bit of sunlight and enjoying the fresh air. And my windows couldn't even open. So I had to come up with, sort of a game plan. So I had a very basic sort of routine where, there's coffee in the morning. And then I had like a couple of sort of exercise bands and stuff like that. So I used to do like a little gym session, get through that. And then run about 8 o'clock, 8:30, there was a knock on the door. I had to wait for about 3 minutes for the person to drop my breakfast. And this was like proper sort of prison environment. And then open up my door, grab my food. And then, my wife, luckily, she dropped off a couple of books and she dropped off a puzzle. So I was doing puzzles. And I had to do sort of everything just to, just for the time to sort of tick over. But the weekends was sort of the hardest thing, proper sort of Sunday blues, so it is actually all a blur, to be honest with you. But for me, this, like I said, there's also a nice time to start the process of sort of slowing myself down. My main goal was, once sort of 2 weeks after I get out of quarantine, I needed to have all my ducks in a row. All my email admins, all those sort of things should have been sorted out. It was just 100% focusing on the family, and luckily, that 2 weeks sort of saved me to get all of that done.
Yeah, it sounds like it was actually, you used it as an opportunity to kind of tick a few boxes, actually. And
no, for sure.
I can imagine as well, just, if you don't have that routine in quarantine or in isolation, you're probably causing yourself more distress than you need to.
No, for sure. The routine, I think, is like in life. It's the most important thing, And so I had quite a cool little thing going, which actually made the 2 weeks go quite quickly. But there was definitely some very long days in between of all this.
Do you do any other sort of like meditation or breathing exercises or anything?
I'm a terrible breather at the moment. I'm working hard on it. But that's one thing I'm not very disciplined at, is doing sort of proper breathing exercises and stuff like that. I'm like, my whole career, I was the worst I always hold my breath. And even like when I speak now, I don't breathe. And that's one thing that I'm conscious of and I try to work on. But no, I didn't do that. For me, it was like just normal sort of like I like the Headspace sort of app on my phone, and it was getting through that 15, 20 minutes a day. And then it was nice for me to connect with my family, with the time zones, because I was awake at 3, 4 in the mornings, 2 in the mornings. It's perfect time to call back home in South Africa and connect with friends back home in South Africa. So that was great to see, and especially in this crazy time that we're in at the moment with COVID, phoning with schools, phoning with people, and just check in, and was sort of a helpline for guys who needed to chat.
Yeah, totally. Do you think then there will be an opportunity, obviously COVID pending, to dart back to South Africa?
No, for sure. Like I said, I've still got a lot of stuff, loose ends I need to go tie up on the South African side, and would love to take the boys back to to the bush and for them to go see all the animals and obviously my family. But for me at the moment, I'm not keen on doing another 2 weeks with the family in quarantine. I think once you've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old in the room for 2 weeks, that is a different sort of gravy.
Totally. Now I'm curious, where do the boys stand on their loyalties?
Well, I tell them about South Africa almost every night. There's the bedtime stories is always the African sort of theme. But I'm pretty much they Aussie little boys at the moment. The only thing I'm fighting, against a hell of a lot is mate. I mean, as soon as the day they call me, they say to me, "All right, mate." It's the day we pack our bags, we fly back to South Africa. But they sort of full on little Aussie boys. But with my shocking sort of Afrikaans accent, hopefully that accent of theirs won't be as strong.
Okay, well, let's take this opportunity then to rewind and compare your kind of life now back to Australia and your upbringing as well. Now, your father played cricket himself, didn't he?
Yeah.
Cricket, I seem to think, has been a massive part of your family with 2 brothers. Has it always just been a permanent feature?
That was us. After school, we always used to pull the lawnmower out of the shed. If we decided we wanted English sort of conditions, we left the grass a little bit longer, subcontinent. We also do a setting on the lawnmower and really make the backyard quite like dust bowl, like a dusty bowl. And so playing sort of rugby cricket in afternoons, breaking windows. That was the sort of normal afternoon in the Morkel household.
Love it. Now, raw talent is massively important when it comes to cricket, but obviously now with the way things have developed in terms of training, facilities, equipment, and everything in that regard, regimes, how's that changed on the cricket scene from what you remember?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I think you have to nail the head. In my journey, my life journey, I've come across so many talented people at school level, young, at sort of junior level, and they just sort of get lost either in the system or they fade away. And for me, I think, like you said, now structures are much better. Coaching is much better. So for me, that's and also the support you get from home. I was quite lucky. We grew up in a sporting family. My dad, took us to all the games when South Africa was playing. So we basically grew up next to a cricket field. And I think that home support that you get, it's not like a pushing support. It's a loving support. It's you finding your own feet in the environment or in the pool. And if you struggle, he's there to advise you and to help you. But not once was we ever forced to do anything. And I think if you get that balance right, with talent, with hard work, that's to me is the recipe of success.
I've been lucky enough to visit South Africa twice now on tour. And one thing that I can just 100% remember about South Africa and the South African schooling system and the boys that we played was the incredible competitiveness and kind of immediate rivalry that is struck up. Where does this stem from in South Africa? How is it so deeply rooted in the boys? It's incredible to see.
Yeah, I just think it's in our blood. We grow up like that. I mean, like you say, now I went to, when I was still living in South Africa, I went on the weekend to a school. There was a school local to the rugby festival, rugby game, and there were 25,000 people watching, under 18 boys play rugby, and I was like blown away. It was on TV, it is just, it's next level. And I think it's that, it's families growing up, loving the sport, and sport is the one thing that unites South Africa. If we do well, that's basically the glue of the country. And I think as youngsters, it's whenever the Springboks were playing or the Proteas were playing, we were glued to the TV. I was in my final year of school, with the World Cups going on. Screw the studying, we were watching cricket, and that was just what we lived. And you sort of breathe that, and so it's definitely sort of drilled into you as a younger age, and from there it just develops and develops, and especially under the Afrikaans communities like me. We love our rugby, we love our sport, we love barefoot and running and kicking and tackling, and
I can only imagine the power of the Rugby World Cup then, and what that did in 2019.
That is huge, and also Siya Kolisi, first black sort of African guy to win the World Cup for South Africa. That is huge, and the energy and back home in South Africa when they brought the trophy back, people in the streets it was going on for weeks, and it was sort of the best time to be alive. And for me, I can just imagine there, a lot of dreams for youngsters were developed and sort of made, and now guys are sort of aspiring and they're chasing that sort of dreams now. So it's just great.
Now, just picking up on something that you briefly touched on, I mean, South Africa still does pose like danger and a potential risk for when it growing up, and I know that sport is a potential escape for that. How difficult is it though to break into that kind of sporting realm when there are kind of not easier opportunities, but just more accessible opportunities to get into a different way of life, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge. We can't sit and lie about it. But I still think, and there's a lot of guys that can back me on that. If you still put the hard yards in, if you still, if you still do the right work and go disciplined about things, you can still play at the highest level. And with the challenges that comes with that off the field, at the end of the day, those sort of things you can't control. And for me, that's why you need a good support system that can keep you level-headed and can keep you on track with that. For me, that's every day you're faced with certain decisions you need to make, and you just hope that you can learn from the mistakes that you make, or make smart enough decisions that can help you into the right direction.
No, I couldn't agree more. Now, of course, I did say that you have a couple of brothers. Speaking of competitiveness, how do you rank? Yeah. How do you rank as a threesome? Who's the most competitive?
Definitely my middle brother Albie. He's a more sort of introvert, quieter sort of guy. I was the baby, so I did all the fielding. Basically, I faced two balls in the backyard, bowled all afternoon. So typical sort of youngster got bullied, but I was quite sort of fortunate with that in my school cricket I always played sort of the higher levels. Like I played with Albie when I was 14, so I was always in a bigger crowd, more experienced crowd, and that also helped me a lot with my growth. From a young age started playing club cricket, so having older brothers and mixing in their circles and playing and competing in the backyard, when their friends came to visit at home, was a great sort of learning curve for me as a youngster.
Yeah, it sounds like you really got again put into the deep end, by playing with the senior boys, and that probably put you in a really good position for your future career, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of schooled from a young age, and I was luckily like a sponge, and I was soaking up, all these little things, and so as soon as my brothers, when they started sort of playing provincial cricket, like I said, we were always there, and just seeing how the guys pad up and how the guys prepare. And I used to bowl in the nets. I always used to love asking, "Can I just come down to the nets and bowl with you guys?" So I was quite fortunate that I had that sort of journey, or that sort of starting point in my life.
I'm curious to know then, when did AB pop along then, and you lived with Albie then together? You all lived together in a house.
Yeah. So I first lived with Albie. And then myself and Albie moved into a place. That was sort of 2008, 2009, and we lived together for 3-4 years. And once again, that was magical. I mean, living with AB, once of all, one of the greatest cricketers the world is ever going to see. that's a sort of motivation. We push each other every day. Let's go to the gym. Let's go to the nets. Let's go and just unwind. And so it was great, sort of living with that. And in that sort of area, all our cricketers basically lived in the same sort of bubble. So there was a lot of braais or barbecues on the weekends. This real sort of band of brothers when I played for the Titans back then.
Can you remember any particular stories of you three living together? Any juicy stories?
But those stories, they sort of buried. We're not allowed to talk about that.
Completely. Well, I have to ask then, who was the messiest out of you three?
It's probably me. I pulled the short straw. So when we moved into the house together, my brother Albia, he had the biggest room. AB at sort of second pick, and I was just sort of like a small room there, a three-bedroom apartment, and so I didn't have a lot of space. So I was definitely the messier one. And my appetite was also much bigger than those guys. So I always used to eat a lot more, and I don't think I was the best sort of housemate, but it was great fun.
Well, if we can just rewind then a couple of years from the time that you guys were living together, because of course, prior to that, you were called up for the South African cricket team, and that was that must have been a massive moment for you. But was that always a realistic goal of yours when you were growing up, and indeed for your brothers as well? Was it a realistic goal that cricket was a potential opportunity to be a form of employment?
No, for sure. That's when I was at school that I used to daydream about that. Just stare at the window and visualize myself playing for South Africa. When I used to go out at school level and bat, I always used to role play like I'm this guy going out to bat, like a Matthew Hayden or Sean Pollock bowling. And, I was quite lucky that with how things worked out for me. I finished school. I was about to start uni. I was sort of, lined up to go play a bit of league cricket there in the UK. And then, once again, my brother said they were sort of getting ready. The West Indies were touring South Africa, and they played a warm-up game against Easterns. And my brother said, "Listen, it's 2 days out before the game. They're looking for net bowlers again. Come and bowl." And I went that afternoon. I bowled to the Eastern boys in the nets, and the coach was, "Listen, what are you doing with your life?" And I said, "No, I'm not sure." And he walked me that afternoon to his office. He gave me like a rookie junior contract, and I was then sort of contracted with the first class team. And a year down the line, the same coach, Ray Jennings, coached South Africa, and England toured South Africa. And they had Flintoff, they had Steve Harmison. So he phoned me. He said, "Listen, we need some tall guys to come and bowl and prep, Callis and those guys in the nets for the upcoming Test series." So I went in the afternoon, bowled. I had a fun afternoon, bowled to Callis, and Callis walked out and he said, "Who's this guy bowling?" And Ray Jennings said, "It's Albie's brother. He's like a 20-year-old, 19-year-old. He doesn't really play." And Callis like, "Can we play him in a Test match tomorrow?" And sort of there, like the word of mouth sort of, went about me bowling, and I was a tall guy. I got a bit of bounce, but I was lanky. I was all over the shop. And there was a bit of interest with me. I played a handful of first-class games. Andre Nel got injured in the first test at Johannesburg, and then they called me and said, "Listen, you're playing Test cricket." So after playing a handful of first-class game, I was straight into the big boys league, and then jeepers, I had to swim quite quickly. I found my feet.
It's crazy how the stars aligned so quickly for you. What was that? Yeah. What was the most immediate challenge then for you as you broke into that team then? Because you were going into the side with some big names in there already.
My biggest challenge is because the boys were already in Durban for that second test. So I arrived sort of a couple of days later, and I walked into the change room, and then all these big guns, Jacques Callis, Mark Boucher, Graham Smith, and I'm walking in, and I'm not quite sure where to sit. So the only spot open was next to Jacques Callis. So I put my bag down next to Jacques, and I said, "Hello, Jacques, I'm Morne." And he just gave me like a proper, old school look and just nodded, and then that was it. So I sat next to for the next 5 days. I sat next to Jacques Callis, which was pretty cool, starstruck. And then, the morning of the Test match, Graham Smith came to me and he said to me, "Listen, yesterday in the practice, his helmet broke." So can he, because those days we didn't travel like nowadays with all the helmets and all those extra spares and stuff like that. So listen, can I take your helmet? Because you're probably going to bat 10 and 11. You won't be needing your helmet. So I said, sure, take my helmet. And he left his broken one, which is like a double XL, helmet. He left it on my bag. And as the test match went on, it was my turn to bat. And I was too nervous and too scared at the time to go and ask for my helmet. So I took his broken one. And, Biffy took all the inside padding, everything he took out of the helmet. And there's like a little Velcro, little sticky sort of thing. And that thing is it scratches. So I walked out to bat. First of all, this helmet was way too big for me. So I was with my shoulder sort of trying to keep the visor, not from covering my eyes. But also this thing was scratching my forehead. And I managed to get I had a little partnership with Sean Pollock that first innings. And I remember coming off and my forehead was just like raw. All the skin was off. And going back to bat the second innings again, putting that helmet on, I was hating life. But it's those sort of things when you walk in and it is just like you say, there's big, massive personalities and you just feel so lost.
Did you get your helmet back?
No, eventually, I went to the manager. I said, "Listen, Graham took my helmet. I've got this broken one." And so it was a big sort of laugh. I had like a massive sort of, raw skin and sort of graze on my forehead.
That's a great story. Well, nonetheless, I mean, Graham ended up giving you some enormous backing, which is magnificent. Let's talk about your international cricket then, from kind of in the broadest sense. What's the most challenging part of international cricket as a whole entity? Maybe it's probably changed slightly different from the start of your career to the end of your career, because I know that family became far more important and decisions became a lot clearer for you. But what is that big challenge that you reflect on and go, actually, that was the hardest part?
It's a simple, not to get too sort of technical about the game. I think the hardest part for me was the media. The hardest part was social media. Like I said, I didn't play a lot of first class cricket. So for me, all my learning, I learned my trade basically in international cricket, where, at 22, 23, it's a tough world. The margins are so much smaller. And I think, in that sort of process, people sort of already start to label you or to, they sort of, what's the word, burn mark you. Like, I used to bowl well for a couple of series, but people always say like Morne Morkel bowl well, but he's inconsistent. And for me, like reading that and always fighting against that at times, that eventually made me lost my place in the team. I was always like playing games to prove the media wrong, to prove social media wrong. You'll have a day and then you just for me, for instance, I like to go, if I want a bit of my own time, I like to go cut my hair and you sit in the hairdresser and the guy next to me, you'll read social media and say, but are you the guy that bowled, so shit on the weekend? And so you could never escape those sort of things. And for me, not having, that sort of, and also like the thing, you don't want to go into a team environment and talk about that, because then people say like, this guy is not mentally tough enough and he's not. So you fight a lot of battles, of those battles, on your own. And I think that for me as a 22 to 25-year-old was the hardest sort of thing, is finding my feet and not trying, and then starting to try too hard. And I was digging a hole for myself and eventually, got dropped. And that was probably the best thing, just to get away and then finding the people to say, right, how am I going to play this international game?
This series is brought to you by two magnificent sponsors, Ascot Group and McGill and Partners. Ascot Group is a global specialty insurance and reinsurance group with a record of underwriting excellence and superior claims service. Founded in 2001, the company provides a broad range of property and casualty solutions to customers worldwide through its platforms in London, Bermuda, and the United States. Ascot is a long-standing supporter of charities with a link to sport, including ongoing sponsorship of the Great Britain Wheelchair Rugby Club. With a recent increase in mental health awareness, the company is particularly proud to support Headstrong Season 5 and Innings with, which focuses on the psychological well-being challenges that arise from professional sport. McGill and Partners is a boutique insurance broker helping corporate clients find specialist solutions for their most challenging and complex risks. Growing rapidly since its launch in 2019, the company operates in the UK, Europe, and the United States, and prides itself on working with some of the biggest companies in the world. And you can find out more on their website, mcgillpartners.com. McGill & Partners understands high performance and the mental health challenges that can be associated with it, regardless of the industry people are working in. The company is fully committed to their employees' well-being and are delighted to be sponsoring the Headstrong podcast series. It is also delighted to support the Ruth Strauss Foundation. Thank you to these two wonderful sponsors. It sounds like then the media played a massive part in your early career then. How did you bounce back from that? Did you find your support network? How did you learn to manage and cope with, and what were your strategies with the media from there on?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it was a matter. It was simple, either have to find a way to deal with it, or I'm going to sink completely. And then a lot of people say, like, delete social media, don't read the newspapers, but you also can't live a life where you don't know what's going on in the world. For me, I like to buy a coffee or get a tea and see what's going on in the world and read the paper and stuff like that. So for me, it was sort of, important to know that, I do all the hard work. I go out and I give 100%. I can't control what people say about me. I can't control what people write about me. I can't control what people think about me. And as you get experience, and I think experience at the end of the day is a key thing. You learn how to deal with those things. You learn how to, when it's time to lock your bag up and to go for, even for a couple of days, to get away from it. To go in the bush, go to the ocean, and just get your mind completely switched off and just get re-energized. Those are the things that you learn after that. But like I said, I think I was quite lucky that, in our Proteus system, we went through a massive culture change, and we got a proper identity with the whole Protea fire thing started. And in that environment, and in that camp, was a security blanket we developed that looked after players. Where when I first started, the guys were we were all passionate playing for South Africa, but there wasn't that identity about team, and we really worked hard on that. I mean, we packed our bags away and we focused on months on going on camps and how we can protect each other, and for me, having massive senior players coming in the media and having my back, like Graham was a fantastic leader. I think, a lot of people sort of criticize him a lot in his career, but the sort of work that guy did off field and, in the media and getting the boys to stay on track was amazing. So, one was the senior players in the team. And for me, it's also, in a way to befriend the media and to become their friends and, to face those demons. A guy, if he's writing a bad article about me, go talk to me about it. And say, yes, I saw the article that you wrote about me. This is my feelings. This is how I feel about it. And, you have a discussion. You later on form a relationship with the guys, and they sort of understand how you feel.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Boom, there you go.
Now, also another challenge that you have previously spoken about, and one that I do want to lightly touch on. International cricket, you do spend a lot of time away from family, going on long tours, and that is exhausting. How did you manage that? What was the biggest challenge about that, and how did you learn to cope with that? Of course, from time to time, I'm sure that family was there the option for them to come on the tour, because I know that the England cricket setup pre-COVID, that was of course an option. So how did you manage that?
I must say, I was okay with it until I started a young family. My two boys now, they really struggle with me sort of going away longer than 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks. Like social media, WhatsApp calls and video calls and Skype calls. That was a game changer, a massive game changer. But in our family or in our sort of household, we try not to stay longer than 3 weeks apart. And we're quite nice. When I played for South Africa, they were quite open at family first. So whenever there's opportunity, family could, travel with us and be with us as long as we needed it. So that's one thing with this. I was quite lucky with the Proteas that they were very family sort of first. They know that is how they could get the best out of the players. But definitely now, when I was the last sort of 3 seasons, when I was in the UK with my wife starting work again, and with COVID, all those sort of things, I saw my family last year for 2 3 weeks and 5 months, and with my boys, and that's extremely hard. So there's no easy way, with that. But yeah, I think the advice I can give on that is to make those sort of periods, if you can travel, if you're allowed to travel, not to make it longer than 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is where conversations on the phone and Skype calls, it loses its edge a little bit. You need that physical sort of touch, and you need that physical sort of presence in the room. So yeah, that is my thing. It's not longer than 3 weeks apart.
Although I have to agree with you, of course, Morne. But one thing that I would say is that ultimately a cricket player's career is quite a short amount of time as a player,
Yeah.
and quite often you do need to go away for longer periods of time to ensure that you do reach maximum potential, and you do play in the long tours and play in those big franchises as well. So it's a tricky one to balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was when I was playing for the Proteas and all the other T20 leagues, I was out of the country. I was away from home, 180, 200 days of the year. I remember I bought a place in Pretoria, moved in, went on tour, and I basically got back, and I didn't even know where to put, where the light switches were, how to operate things. I basically had, my manager had to come and help me with those sort of things back then. So. Yeah, I think, like you said, and that's the sort of things that you try and remind yourself, that, your life is only so short and your career is only so short, and you try to brainwash yourself, a lot of those sort of things. But at the end of the day, family is also very important, and that's why I say you're always going to face with moments where you need to make decisions. Like, I mean, for a period of 12 to 13 years, when I played for the Proteas, I didn't have one birthday with my dad or my mum, or, like family sort of things. And yes, I was career driven, but also that's the decisions you need to make. Am I going to play less cricket? Am I happy with financially what I'm making, or am I chasing for experience? Like that's your own personal decisions that you need to make up and weigh up and see where you are in your life and at your stage of your life.
Definitely. That sounds difficult in regards to your birthday. I hope the boys made you a cake.
Yeah, no, I'm getting a lot of love now. I'm paying a lot of rent now for the time I missed out. My wife, she makes me work, so I'm catching up for lost time.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a particular match that actually I can certainly draw back on. I suppose it draws back down to what emotion and coping with emotions on the cricket field. Now, a match that I can certainly recall is the South Africa versus New Zealand semi-final.
Yeah.
And that which went down to the wire, and the Kiwis took it just at the end. And on such a big stage and such high stakes, how do you manage your emotion when it comes to delivering in a performance?
Yeah, that was a massive game, and I think there's quite a nice photo of me sitting on the field crying my eyes out. But that was just when Grant Elliott hit that ball for six. That was just like, everything that I've kept together, the poker faces, the braveness, everything just there in that moment, just, it just burst. It was like a dam wall just burst. Because I knew the chances of me ever playing in a World Cup again, that is my last opportunity. And I honestly felt and I honestly believed that, the team we had there was a team that could go on and win the World Cup. And, with everything that goes with a South African team whenever we go into an ICC event with chokers and stuff like that, I honestly felt that day we didn't choke. It was a great game of cricket. Cricket was actually the winner of that day, and and it is a fantastic atmosphere, fantastic crowd, and to sit there for 2 seconds and to know that is now the end. That is now sort of the line in the sand for me and for this great bunch of guys that we did everything for almost like a year and a half. Everything was just for that World Cup, and it gets sort of came to an end very quickly.
Yeah, I think with big games like that, as you say, it's just you do hold in all this emotion on such a big stage, and I suppose it's just like the bursting a balloon, and it just kind of just flows out of you.
It's that, but also at that time as a senior player, for that 6-8 weeks, you're the guy that you front up for a lot of things. a lot of emotional energy goes into those things to pick other guys up that might be struggling on tour. You've got issues, not that I had, but issues potentially at home that you need to sort out. So you need to. There's a lot of sort of layers of things that form in a period like that, and it's like anything. If you chip away at the strongest wall, eventually there will be a crack, and that was my sort of crack. That is done.
As a senior player, then, how do you manage kind of giving your energy and emotional energy and time to people that are looking up to you? But then, how do you manage it to make sure that you do give enough time for yourself?
That's very important. I think I'm still struggling with that. I think one of the best guys that's sort of figured that out is AB. AB there's a lot of pressure always on AB to go out and perform and to go out and do his thing. And he's just a guy that listen, tonight I'm shutting down. I don't want to see you guys for a day or two. And I think the maturity that we had in our group and in the understanding that we had in our culture, is that it was okay. We understood, everybody. Like I said, we're going back. I'm just going to rewind a little bit. Back in our meetings, it was a big thing for us to be able to be vulnerable in front of the team at times, so the team can actually know what's going on. So if you keep all those things inside, that's where that's sort of a red flag. That's the trouble area. And we sort of going into the World Cup, we understood everybody. If AB wanted to go and sleep, or if he walks in the morning at the breakfast and he's sort of just sitting on his own, it's not like he's angry or he's upset. That's his space. And I think as soon as you figure out that sort of balance, and you can find your own sort of way without being an energy sapper where people think, oh, what's now wrong with him today? Is he sad or whatever? If you can be not an energy sapper, but people can understand that sort of space you're in, then that's quality. That's great.
I really like to hear about that the culture. It sounds really great in within the South African dressing room. Now, of course, I do need to say something about you, Morne. You're, of course, a world record holder, and now that's pretty cool. Do you want to tell everyone what your world record is?
Do you want to come on my boat that I've won for all the nobles I've bowled? Shocking.
So Morne is the world record holder for the most amount of wickets taken with no balls.
No balls, yeah.
How many is it?
I think it's 13.
Well, there's the official and then the unofficial as well.
Yeah, so at least I'm a record holder of something, So that's not something I'm very proud of. But sort of my career. Whenever I took a wicket, I could never sort of express and celebrate because I always have to worry. Shit, it was my foot behind the line. And once at DRS, once they've given the green light, I'm like, oh, and then the moment is gone. But,
exactly. Well, you've played a portion of your cricket now over here in the UK. In fact, you've played quite a lot of cricket over here in the UK. Where's your favourite place to play?
Without a doubt, in the UK, the Oval. Lord's is special. Sort of walking down through the members area. Then the people popping the champagne, and fantastic atmosphere at Lord's. You can't take that away. But I have to say Oval. I've 3 years of my life now playing there for Surrey, and Alex Stewart is an absolute legend and looked after me, and we managed to win the championship there, which they did. It's the first time in donkey years. So to be part of that and to call Surrey and the Oval my home ground was pretty special. And on a Friday night with the T20 there sold out. They call it the best nightclub in town. So that is quite cool to play there for 3 seasons. So I really enjoyed playing for South Africa, touring the UK. I think when I said to you earlier, one of the big things is you need to find ways to get away from the game. And I think whenever we played in London, to go into the streets of London, to go to a theatre show. I think I saw Phantom of the Opera about 15 times, and to go and experience that for me. Oh, sorry, I lost you there.
That's all right.
That for me, this was the ultimate. So I really enjoyed that, and then. We always used to travel. I also used to travel with my fishing rods and stuff. So we had quite a nice group of guys that enjoyed fishing. So whenever we go to Sri Lanka, fish in Sri Lanka from there, we stop off in Maldives and then fish for 5 or 7 days in the Maldives. So all those sort of subcontinent sort of places where you could fish and where you can go and explore and get out. Those are the places that I love sort of touring. So enjoy that.
Are there any British delicacies or anything that you miss particularly about the country? It sounds like maybe fish and chips.
Fish and chips, bit of Yorkshire pudding, rice pudding. I used to be a sucker for rice pudding. And then you can't be the proper sort of pub meal. So have a couple of beers, sit in the pub, and just talk of old stories. For hours.
One thing you probably don't miss is the rain.
No, the rain, and then that first 2 weeks, 3 weeks in April, start of the season. When it's freezing cold, and as an overseas pro, you must bowl the overs, but you can't even feel your toes. I'm not going to miss that. But I'm going to miss a lot. I was quite lucky that in my time there I stayed in Wimbledon, and that those 2 weeks when the tennis is on, it was the best 2 weeks sort of, to be in the UK and just to get sort of soak up the tennis atmosphere, and so it's a quality place.
Well, speaking of frozen toes, I have to talk to you about kind of injury, because unfortunately in your career you have been no stranger to injury, and that is an enormous challenge when you are employed as a professional sportsman, naturally.
Yeah.
But it's not just the physical challenge and the big barrier of injury through physical restraint. It's the mental battle that you have to endure when you are recovering from injury. Now, how did you kind of challenge your own mindset when you were returning from injury, and indeed when you were injured? What were your kind of strategies to not only go through physio and get through all the physical kind of demands, but how did you cope with that injury, being away from the team?
Yeah, I think you go through stages of injury. When you're younger, you think, okay, you've got time to play, and you will, there's always time to get fit. But the older you get, if you pick up injuries, again, the media starts labeling you, as a fast bowler, he's too old. Like at 33, 34, I felt like I was bowling the best sort of, in my career. And, but you always people say, no, Morne is now 33, he's on the wrong side of 30, or, he's old. But I was physically and mentally, I was then sort of in my prime. So I think that's sort of the again, it's a tricky stage when you get injured there. So I just looked after my body, as best I could. Ate well, trained well, slept well. Really was on top of all my recovery. Looked after the amount of balls I bowled. Was very careful, those sort of things. And it also helped, like we had a fantastic bowling unit. So we used to bowl teams out. So sometimes my workload, wasn't as high as it used to be. But in terms of injuries, there's a couple of games you just have to suck it up, and you play with injuries. I mean, my last test match, I first had a sort of side strain, and I said, no, listen, I want to carry on. I can't now not play, the last test. So got my sort of side injected, numbed, and then arrived in the UK. And the doctor I saw in the UK, he thought I was in a car accident. And because I arrived there and I said, listen, I just got a normal side strain. And he said, so the car accident you were in? I said, no, I'm a cricketer. I was in no car accident. I was playing cricket. And he said, well, I've actually got now such a fractured rib because I was numbing and drinking all the painkillers and stuff like that. It actually broke my rib. And he said, there's this sort of trauma you see in car accidents. So you learn how to deal and play and get through things like that. I mean, I had blisters and stuff in my foot that you, not to sound like I was this Rambo tough guy, but I think mentally, when you play for your country, you tend to push a little bit harder. But once you're injured, like I said, it's important to get the right people around you. I was very lucky that I had some quality physios, back home in South Africa. And that for me was important to train with them daily. They sort of fed me the right things mentally, from a self-talk point of view, from getting myself fit. And then, like I said, we were lucky that I played in the best cricket environment ever. Whenever you were fit and you're ready to go, it was, okay, let's do it. You're in.
Totally. You also did recently have an injury on your ankle. How many operations have you had now in your career?
No, I actually had just one operation. That is my first operation, is the ankle operation. So I had like lots sort of soft tissue, like hamstrings and quads, like normal fast bowlers get. And then I had a bad sort of broken rib, and then I had a bad back. But other than that, I was actually not that bad. Myself and Dale Steyn, we've actually got a record for, bowling partnership, playing the most consecutive Test matches back to back without having any injuries. So
I know what it's like with fast bowlers, the competitiveness as well. Did you and Dale Steyn have a big competitive drive with each other?
I wouldn't say competitive. I think we pushed each other, a lot. Also, I grew up with Dale, always played sort of junior level school cricket against him, and then played with him at the Titans, our first class. So our careers sort of started at the same time. And yeah, we sort of, myself and Dale, we like all the things off the field, fishing, name it, wildlife, swimming, surfing, all those sort of things. So it was always, we're always together in terms of those sort of things. And I think it is more sort of work together in a partnership than actually competing against each other. Not one day, I think, was he jealous of me or I was jealous of him. We just wanted to bowl teams out, win games for South Africa, and get off the field, and let the batters go and do their thing. So it was massive more like just supporting each other and sort of finding the best way to win games.
Now looking to the future, then we've got a big day in a couple of days, the IPL auction. By the time that this comes out, we'll probably know the results of the IPL and things like that. But what do you anticipate your kind of 2021 to feature then?
Mine at the moment is very uncertain. Like I said to you, I'm 37 years, so hopefully people can still. I had a decent sort of big bash. Hopefully people saw that I can still bowl and do my thing. But I'm not getting my hopes up for any of that. If I get an opportunity to go play again, great. I played IPL for 8 years. There are so many other tournaments also nowadays that you can target, but IPL is just it's the league you want to play in. It's quality cricket, so it'd be great if I can play there. And if not, I'll be at home. I'll be a family man, and sort of plan my next sort of venture. Sooner or later, the curtain is going to drop on me, and I'm sort of planning for life after cricket. If that's coaching and getting involved for sort of mentorship and helping where I can. And then just figuring life out here in Australia.
Totally. Here we go. Do we think we might see you in an English summer?
Yeah, I mean, I can never say no. But for me, it's just the traveling and traveling is just hard. I mean, as soon as they sort of let go of the quarantine here in Australia, I know if I don't have the quarantine, that will make life a lot more easier. I mean, I was sort of penciled in to play for Surrey again this summer. But the windows what they gave me to fly back to spend time with my family, I'll be in quarantine. So for me, it was not an easy call to make. But it's unfortunately the life we live in now.
Now, I've really enjoyed this chat, Morne. There's one question that I ask every guest that comes on Headstrong, and I'm curious to hear what your answer is. What does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong. That's a fantastic. Before I answer the question, actually, when I got the message and I saw the title of it, I was, drawn to it completely. And for me, headstrong is something in the modern life that we're going to need more of. I think life and the world is busy changing, and there's going to be a lot of challenges. And I think it's going to be important for people to reach out to communities, to reach out to schools, to reach out to youngsters, and like you say, get their head strong. Because I think we're in for a sort of a tough time, and for me, it is staying in the moment. For me, it's being present, and for me, it is to form your own sort of bubble around you and get all negativity out of your space, so you can just focus and be clear on what you need to achieve.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, I have to say thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much, Jason Holder, for setting us up. Huge thanks there.
What a legend.
Yeah, what a legend. Thanks so much, Morne. I've really enjoyed this, and best of luck with everything and to 2021.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
We are supporting the Ruth Strauss Foundation with Headstrong and Innings with. Sir Andrew Strauss lost his wife to non-smoking lung cancer in 2018. Just before her death, Ruth and Andrew discussed the idea of setting up a foundation to help other families who would be facing a similar ordeal. The Ruth Strauss Foundation wants to ensure that all families with dependent children facing the death of a parent are offered emotional support and guidance to prepare for the future, allowing them to make the most of their time together. In tandem, they are driving the need for more research and collaboration in the fight against non-smoking lung cancers, which are on the rise and to which Ruth ultimately lost her life. You can support their cause by making a donation today. To donate, text RSF10 to 70191 to donate £10. Or you can donate online at virginmoneygiving.com/fund/Headstrong/RSF. Thank you for all your support of Headstrong and the Ruth Strauss Foundation. And that's it for this episode of Headstrong. A huge thank you to Morne for coming on to the podcast, and I wish him all the best out in Australia, including with the creepy crawlies and the snakes. If you're enjoying this series, please do go leave a review and a rating. Every single download and stream helps, but so does a review and a rating. So if you can do that, I'd be truly grateful. Join me next week, where I will have another cricketer talking all things Headstrong and all things cricket. All that's left for me to say is, thank you so much for tuning in to Headstrong, and I wish you all the very best.